2023, the Greater Houston Disaster Alliance was formed, combining 35 years of disaster recovery experience between the Greater Houston Community Foundation and the United Way of Greater Houston. To accomplish its mission, the Alliance seeks to strengthen year-round disaster preparedness, as well as ensure that our region has the social services network and systems in place to respond rapidly and, most importantly, effectively during times of disaster. And joining us now to tell us more is Diana Zarzuelo, Vice President of Community Impact of Greater Houston Community Foundation, and Mary Vazquez, Vice President of Community Outreach for United Way of Greater Houston. Diana and Mary, thank you so much for being here and welcome to Hello Houston. Right off the bat, we're witnessing a historic crisis unfolding, and it's devastated Central Texas. As leaders in disaster response, what is your perspective on the scale and impact of this event?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It's been really difficult to watch, I think, for everyone, and it's a truly tragic event. The impact and the scale of the floods in Central Texas, really, we're beginning to see that emerging data come through, but the lives lost, it's just not calculable, right? And our hearts go out to all of the impacted families, including our own here in Houston. So it's 130 lives lost, 160 still missing. It's likely to be the deadliest inland flood in American history. And we were on the phone with FEMA yesterday. They're working really quickly. They have over 3,200 applications for assistance already in, so they're working to process all of that as quickly as possible. But it's important to understand the difference between relief and recovery. And right now we're still in that relief phase and just getting into immediate recovery. Relief is about that life-saving, sort of basic needs, food, shelter, finding those that are still missing. It's to work to stabilize families, and all of that work is really, really critical. The recovery piece is where the Disaster Alliance really focuses, and then that year-round preparedness. That's where the rebuilding homes, rebuilding livelihoods and businesses, really getting that whole community on a path to recovery from an economic and emotional standpoint too. And that is a very long journey. It takes months and years. We've experienced that through many events here in Houston ourselves. So it's been really incredible to see the generosity, the outpouring of support, and that is really special to Texas and to Houston and the country. And so we just encourage everybody to think about that long haul and to be there for Central Texas, too.
It's so hard to be prepared for everything, but you are. I mean, you have to be ready for the worst disasters and the ones that you can't even imagine, right? So how do you go about that? What's your go-to plan?
Well, for us at United Way of Greater Houston, in addition to the great work that we do with the Greater Houston Disaster Alliance and in partnership with Greater Houston Community Foundation, we also operate our 211 Texas United Way Helpline, which is the single most largest helpline of its kind in Texas.
You said that really fast. I want to make sure our listeners get that. What was the title of this program?
211 Texas United Way Helpline.
211 Texas United Way Helpline.
Just all 211?
Just all 211. And we are there 24 hours a day, 365 days of the year, answering calls for assistance from individuals in need. We answered 1.3 million connections last year. Wow. And since this tragedy unfolded, we have been there answering the calls for help. Over 900 individuals have called seeking assistance related to this disaster, primarily seeking assistance with basic needs, housing, food, financial assistance, how to report missing loved ones or to get reunification information. So we have been on the phone with those individuals providing that assistance. And so we do that in times of disaster and year-round. But primarily in our community, we are about also making sure individuals know how they should prepare in times of disaster. And so we do that in partnership with Greater Houston Community Foundation as part of our Disaster Alliance work. We ensure that we have a strong network of partners ready to help us in that endeavor.
When folks think about disaster relief and help from FEMA, oftentimes what you hear is complaints about red tape and the time it takes. Here we've got two big organizations coming together. How are you folks working to make sure that the resources get out into the hands of the people that need them more quickly and efficiently?
That is truly where philanthropy fills the gap. I mean, that's why this work is so important, because we make it easy for people to give really clearly to support and accelerate recovery. We do fill gaps where public resources aren't able to support certain kinds of families. And we know historically about half of those that apply get denied. So it's important for us to be here and be ready to receive donations, and then we are actively prepared and have the infrastructure in place to get those resources out as quickly as possible and effectively as possible. So we use data to target resources, because the resources are never enough, to the hardest hit, most vulnerable families.
And what lessons can you talk to us a little bit about that the Greater Houston Disaster Alliance has learned from past disasters right here in Harris County, in our Houston area? Because, we just had the anniversary of Hurricane Beryl, and that just passed. How have those natural disasters here in our area shaped your approach within your organization on how to be prepared?
Well, I think first and foremost, we formed the Disaster Alliance. The Greater Houston Disaster Alliance, we did not have standing infrastructure to do this work year-round. And so we received generous support from Enbridge and Phillips 66 to be able to have this collaborative partnership that works year-round. We now have staffing year-round to be able to do this and to do it well and learn from each disaster. So we're always now focused on preparedness, we're focused on recovery, and then on the resiliency work. And that has been made possible through this alliance. I think that's one thing that we've learned. We've also learned about how critical it is to have nonprofits ready to be the boots on the ground to help those individuals in need. And so we have vetted and convened over 100 different nonprofit partners that work with us, because we know it takes all of us to do this work. And so they are ready and standing by. Anytime there's a disaster, we can quickly activate this network of partners to get resources on the ground.
So you're sort of a neighbor-to-neighbor connecting group.
We are.
So I call you and say, I need this, and you say, Frank, here's where to get it, and try to hook me up, right? So that pretty much answers sort of what you do when somebody needs the help. What do you do to prepare in advance when it's so difficult to know what to prepare for?
It really is. So right now what we're doing is we're convening and putting on these disaster clinics. Through a grant through Verizon, we have disaster clinics in our community where we meet with neighbors to help them fill out their own household disaster preparedness plan. And we have a disaster preparedness plan that we are making available electronically, digitally, and in paper form, and encouraging our nonprofit network and our neighbors to start talking about preparedness now. And we have a QR code available that has the plan in all the disaster clinics that we can share with your audience, as well as you can find it at www.unitedwayhouston.org/disaster clinics.
I would just add, it's a collective problem that we all are a part of the solution. So thank you all for having us here on the show to talk about this topic, because the data shows that only about 8% of Houstonians through Kinder's survey say that they're very well prepared for the next disaster.
8%.
8%. And that's a 2024 survey. So we have a lot of work to do. And the work is at all levels across all sectors. And it starts with the individuals and the families and the neighborhoods and city and county leaders and working across sectors, which is why the Alliance exists. I mean, we're here for the philanthropic and nonprofit sector, that social infrastructure that's really needed, because the reality is government resources are only so fast and they only can do so much. And so it really takes a collective approach.
I'm assuming the Disaster Alliance coordinates with local officials and with FEMA, and so that we're hitting different segments, different areas. What do you think are the lessons other communities can take from the work you're doing? And especially when they talk about defunding or dismantling FEMA at different levels, other communities are going to have to pick up some of the slack. What can you teach them from your experiences?
Yeah, we've been honestly on calls with colleagues, community foundations and United Ways, answering that question. And I do think here in Houston, we have something special because we have this strategic partnership. We've just had so many disasters, and we've learned a ton. I think what makes Houston a potential national model is that we are centralizing resources to make it as easily accessible as possible. So when we think about not just being fast and accelerating recovery, we're also trying to make that as seamless as possible. We have another partner called Connective. It's another nonprofit that is focused on disaster recovery and resiliency year-round. And they have the tech solution that enables a single place for folks to go and then apply for whether it's financial assistance or home repair and then get matched to a nonprofit partner. That is not common across the country. It's not also common for a community foundation or United Way to be hand in hand, to be like, for donors and funders, hey, this is the place you can give, versus having 5-10 different places that you can give. So we are coordinated and we are collaborating with these various partners, which make us unique.
So if you had to guess, you say 92% of people really aren't prepared. So do you think it's that they're apathetic and they just don't care, or do you think it's unaffordable? And where's the disconnect there?
I think it's the belief that it's not going to hit me.
The apathy of it's not going to hit me, and
Not that I don't care. It's just I can't even imagine this disaster is going to hit me, so I don't need to be that prepared.
Well, you were there when we had 60 inches of rain too.
I know, but
It's a little bit of all of that. Honestly, some of us have prepared before and it hasn't hit us, and so we do develop this apathy towards it. Others, it is, we know in our community that individuals don't have $400 saved for an emergency, so therefore it's really difficult for them to develop a go bag that has those critical supplies should they have to hunker down or should they have to evacuate. So we are trying to make sure that we help them secure those items to be ready and to think through what is it that I need to be able to be prepared. We know that for every dollar that we invest in preparedness, it saves $6 in future recovery cost. So that's a significant
That is very
stat.
interesting. And you also mentioned $400. Talk to me a little bit more about that $400, because now I'm intrigued, because I know personally, as the stories, and I've said this on the show multiple times, as these stories unfold and we look at first-hand accounts coming out of what happened over 4th of July, it is heartbreaking, and it also has brought so much awareness about being prepared. And I read one specific story in the Texas Monthly, and afterwards I told Dan, I said, I don't know, should we keep, life jackets in our garage? And you mentioned $400. I want to know more about that.
Sure. The 2024 Kinder Institute Houston area survey found that 46% of individuals in our community do not have $400 saved for an emergency at all. And so that is a significant number of individuals that are living paycheck to paycheck, only covering the basic needs and not being able to invest in that rainy day fund for themselves.
A Social Security check to Social Security. We had an interesting comment on YouTube. Is there any specific outreach efforts for apartment communities? They seem to be at the mercy of apartment owners during the recovery phase, and also senior living facilities.
We definitely are looking at targeting all communities, and so we want to make sure that this disaster plan is available digitally, and we're trying to get it out to any of our partners that have connections with those folks. Certainly we can connect with the Houston Apartment Association or other networks of that nature to make sure that it gets broadly distributed, because it is an issue where you're right. I think we saw that during Hurricane Harvey, where so many apartment complexes were affected, and there was no place for individuals to relocate because the vacancies, there was, all of the units were occupied or damaged. And so we are always having to think about that group of neighbors as well, and making sure that we do a targeted outreach to those communities.
Well, I know that I can't tell you how many people would call me and say, I spent this money on a hurricane kit getting ready, and we didn't have a hurricane. And that was part of my Social Security check. So that kind of resource and what you're providing is really necessary.
And the other flip side of that is, you mentioned that's a high percentage of people that can't afford, $400 for that rainy day fund. But what about somebody that says, hey, you know what? I can afford that, and I would like to support when disaster hits. I want to be able to support my neighbor and give confidently. Because also something else that we're seeing is so many little mom and pop fundraisers were coming up, and people want to give. We know that people want to support our communities, but we also want to make sure that it's going to the right person. What can you tell for people that say, hey, you guys are doing great work. How can we support our neighbors during times of need?
If you are wanting to focus on helping people rebuild that recovery piece, we hope that you give through the Disaster Alliance. We are aggregating those resources. We have the trusted relationships with nonprofit partners who we know they're vetted. They are effective. We've seen them perform time and time and again. So we hope that everyone considers us that trusted sort of go-to place from a philanthropic standpoint. There are other great organizations that are doing immediate relief work, the Houston Food Bank, the American Red Cross, Baker Ripley, all of those, and those are places to give as well. And of course, we encourage to give directly to a nonprofit partner if you have a relationship there. But if you're looking for a place to give, the Disaster Alliance is the place for Houston.
That's right. Diana Zarzuelo is the Vice President of Community Impact for Greater Houston Community Foundation, and Mary Vazquez is the Vice President of Community Outreach for United Way of Greater Houston. Thank you both for joining us today on Hello Houston.